There are no issues with this request from the police department or from the zoning department.
Very good. Any questions for Ms. Dickerson on that item? Item 2, Mr. Pruitt is here to talk to us about a tax abatement for Swage Lot.
Yes, sir. So this is a request from 58 Inc., Shelby County's Economic Development Organization, and the county's Economic and Industrial Development Board. They've been working with a company called Swagelock, which is located on Highway 119 over near Greystone. It's in unincorporated Shelby County, but it is within the City of Hoover police jurisdiction. So they're going to be doing an expansion of their facility, $3.4 million of office manufacturing space. Because the company is located within our police jurisdiction, state law indicates that the city council is still the granting authority for any tax abatements. In this case, they're not requesting any incentives from the city, but they are requesting the abatement of non-educational property taxes for the county and the state. And so the item you have before you tonight is basically consenting that the county's Economic Development Authority can abate the county's portion and the state portion. They'll still pay the full police jurisdiction tax that they owe, which is half of our sales tax. So a good project for our partners and going to be adding some jobs in our neighborhood.
In 13 years, you'd think you'd seen most everything, but this is a new one.
Kind of different, but we're excited about it.
Ms. Driver?
I was just going to ask what kind of business you have.
Yeah, do y'all want to speak briefly what they do?
Sure. Amy Sturdivant from 58 Inc. The company makes specialty metal products, and so it's custom to very precision metal instruments that they make. So in our meeting of SKIDA, when they were talking to our board members, some of them who are working in special seals and also precision instruments for biotechnology, that they're both, aware of them and their products. So they serve products locally, but they also serve across the Southeast.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Item 5 is an item for Ms. Borden with the library. Ms. Borden, you want to let her talk about your business? All right, this is accepting a grant from the Alabama Library Service.
Do you want to talk about the grant or you want me to? So our library got a grant. It requires a city contribution. And so this is, the library board has already accepted this grant. It is for a lending library, a laptop lending library, right?
This is a Library Services and Technology Act grant. It's a federal grant that's distributed through the state agency, and it is for a laptop lending station. So it will include 12 laptops that people can just check out as they want. The grant is for $46,000 with a match of $11,500 from the city. And normally this would be in our city budget, but the state agency was delayed this year getting us the grants.
Any questions for these ladies on this item? Thank you both.
We're asking for a budget amendment,
Sure,
right, to
in conjunction
spend
with
the
it.
city
Yep.
portion.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Cornett, you also have item 6, authorizing the
Yes.
city attorney to engage with Kroll Associates.
Yes, so the city collected questions related to the Kroll study and then forwarded those to Kroll to answer, and there were many more questions than what were anticipated that will involve additional fees for Kroll to answer. And so this is a budget amendment to request to spend that money, or rather to have Wallace Jordan engage Kroll to answer those questions so that we can reimburse them for that. And that is, the estimate was a not to exceed amount of $10,000.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Cornett?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
When the gentleman, Mr. Slavic, came the first time, he mentioned, I know that was an abbreviated visit. A lot of us were supposed to meet with him. Later in the day, that meetings got moved. There were meetings that were moved up, and then he had to leave. He said he would come back. It would be a lot more physically responsible to pay for a plane ticket and a hotel room than pay $10,000 to have him come back. Because those questions, quite honestly, there were a lot, but they were the same question over and over again. Why did we do the audit? We've answered that. We had some questions that we needed answered, and we hadn't had a forensic audit. And you're the third CFO change since that time, so it made sense. Why did it come up during a public hearing? I don't know the answer to that. It was a question that the attorney asked and it was answered. I don't know. What files were deleted? We've covered that. They were notes and they were files that, there was nothing that was deleted that was finance related. It was all notes. So there was the same questions over and over again as I read through the document. It's more fiscally responsible to have him come here, give him 10 minutes at a council meeting or 20 minutes, whatever it takes, let him answer the public's questions, which I think what you'll see is the public will answer those same questions I ask, than to pay $10,000 to do it. I mean, I get it. I want this past us. This item has dwelled for months and months and months when it should have been receive the audit, talk about the findings of the audit, work on fixing those findings and move on. That's just my 2 cents on it. I think he said he'd come back. Let's have him back.
Thank you, Mr. Posey. Any other questions or comments? Very good. Item 7 is for Mr. Martin. This is part of our regular agenda, a conditional use approval to change conditional use for 3599 Deerfield Drive.
Yes, sir. This is the second reading. I don't have anything additional to report from the first reading. They are looking to upgrade the daycare home to a group daycare on this particular location, and we do have some conditions within the conditional use resolution that they meet all of the requirements and improvements outlined within the application, and it is inspected by building and fire department, and also no pickup or drop-off service on Atkins Trim.
Members are in receipt of one communication from a nearby resident who is opposing this change. Any questions or comments from members for Mr. Martin?
So, Mr. Martin, I understand that group homes such as these, daycare homes, have to be licensed by DHR, is that right?
That's correct.
Do they also require a city business license?
They do.
So in asking some questions in advance of tonight's work session, I learned that this entity does not have a city business license. And I wondered, is this really even appropriate for us to be voting on at this time if that's the case?
I can certainly get with our revenue apparatus to see if we can get that rectified.
Are there inspections that go along with obtaining a business license, or is that just come along with the items that you have listed in the conditions?
Generally, the inspections take place prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And the CO in this particular case would be withheld until the items that were outlined, the improvements, were made and inspected by our building and fire departments. As far as the issuance of a business license, whether there is an individual inspection, I'd have to inquire of our building department.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, Mr. Martin, you also have item 8 to amend the ordinance for zoning at 2020 Trammell Chase, also a second reading.
Yes, second reading. This particular application is to rezone the property at that address from the E1 estate residential to R1 single-family residential. This too comes with a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission with some conditions. The first on the overhead being that the property is only entitled to one dwelling unit. It shall not be subdivided into additional lots in the future. And 2, that the existing front setback on the property be maintained.
Let's go ahead and talk about 9 too, and we'll take them in conjunction. So this is a declaration of vacation of easement for 2020 Trammell Chase.
Yes, there is an easement, a utility easement that is indicated on the plat of the property. We have reviewed the easement, and the city finds no use or purpose for it. And they also submitted letters from each of the utilities that serve this area. None of the utilities identified any infrastructure within the easement or a use for it. So we would recommend that this particular easement be vacated.
Okay. Any questions about 8 or 9 regarding the property on Trammell Chase? Very well. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Yep.
I think you'll have a couple of first readings to cover here in a few moments. Mr. Cope is here to talk to us about 2 franchise agreements, beginning with item number 10, an agreement
Council.
with Lumos Fiber of Alabama.
Yeah, Council, Mr. President. This would be a new fiber franchise agreement for Lumos Fiber. It's in line with all of our other fiber franchise agreements that we have for Tier 1 and Tier 2 telecoms. So they'd have the same guidance, restrictions, and penalties for operating inside of the right-of-way for putting infrastructure in place. And then Brent is here with Lumos if y'all have any direct questions of him.
Any questions for Mr. Cope or Mr. Lumos? Very good.
It's an easy night for you.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Very easy. Thank you, sir. Item 11 is a similar agreement for a franchise agreement with MCI Metro.
Yeah, so MCI Metro has already had a franchise agreement, and they should have renewed it last year. So instead of a renewal, this will just be a new agreement with the same guidance and controls that we had in place before. The previous one, we hadn't had any issues with them, so we didn't see any reason with not moving forward with this one.
Very good. I know you are asking Mr. Cope that these be considered for immediate consideration on Monday. Is there a rush on this, or why could this not have a?
So the
first and
secondary one is just because we're asking for the first one. I can let Brent, did he just walk out? I just lost him, I guess. Well, we lost our opportunity to ask
That's
that
okay.
question. They're working with T-Mobile as part of their project, and they are actually ready to get started. They've got contractors ready to get started, and that'll just delay the construction process, in fact, their overhead. So they were hoping to move forward with it.
I see. Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Cope?
Thank you.
Sir. Mr. Martin, you have 2 first readings. Item 12 is granting a conditional use approval for the Family Entertainment Center coming to Lorna Road.
All right, so we have an application before us for first reading. The Bargain Hunt location on Lorna Road. There is an applicant that is interested in taking that particular space and leasing it for the purpose of having a family entertainment center on the premises. This particular family entertainment center would include bowling lanes, as well as arcade, food service, as well as some alcohol service. And we have, of course, reviewed this with the Planning Commission. Planning Commission heard this case earlier this month and recommends to this body approval of this conditional use with a couple of conditions. One being that the landscape in the immediate environs of this particular unit on the site be refurbished, brought back. There are some planter islands that currently exist on the site where the trees over time have been removed and not replaced, and some other improvements that would bring at least this portion of the site directly in front of that unit into compliance with our ordinance related to tree conservation. The other conditions that the Planning Commission recommends would be that the business offer food service in keeping with the food service restaurant use classification at the very least in order to sell alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption. I don't believe that one is going to be an issue, but they do intend on having a full-service kitchen on this site, so they would certainly meet that classification. And then thirdly, the business would operate within the hours specified here, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m., and Sunday from 10 a.m. to midnight.
Any questions from the members on that item? Very good. Item 13 is a resolution granting conditional use approval for the establishment of Sticks and Stones Cocktail Bar.
All right, this particular location is in the new commercial development at Knox Square, directly across Stadium Trace Parkway from the Hoover Met. They are looking to occupy a singular unit within that new development. The address for it is 5852 Elsie Road. The Planning Commission and city staff have reviewed this particular application as well. Planning Commission considered it earlier in the month and would recommend approval of this conditional use with a couple of conditions. First, that any live entertainment offered on the premises be relegated to music performed indoors. The volume of such music should not be of such intensity to be perceived off of the property. So in other words, if you're in the single-family residential sector or the Knox Square senior or adult living facility, you would not hear or perceive the music, nor should it be disruptive to the businesses operating in adjacent units. Number two, the business offer food service in keeping with that food service restaurant classification at a minimum, similar to the last application. In this particular case, they are looking to have a limited service kitchen on site. So we believe, since they are going to be offering food service, that it will meet that classification and permit alcohol sales for on-premise consumption. And then finally, that the business will cease operations at 11 p.m. daily. That was a request of the applicant for that time frame.
Any questions for Mr. Martin? This is a first reading, of course. Will be heard again and voted on at our first meeting in February. Any questions or comments? For that item? None? In general, Mr. Murphy? In general?
Yeah, I was listening in online. Something real quick. My support on the Councilman Posey for the Kroll report calls to document, from a documentation standpoint, the average individual will have it on YouTube, of course, but for a matter of record, since we have done this, it'd be great to kind of document this from a paperwork standpoint for future people to be able to look at it. Everybody can't go back and look at years ago or 5 years ago to find the YouTube of them speaking, but you can always print a report to make it easy. But that's just my 2 cents on that. And on the bargain hunt facility on 12, is the owner of, is that owned individually, the different units, or one by one company, that entire shopping strip mall?
The shopping center has an entity that owns it, Safeway.
All right, so is there any future plans to upgrade that facility?
None that we're aware of.
Okay, so we don't, I know we want to always have businesses, but I guess the only leverage we're using is try to at least help out with that small area to beautify it in some type of regard.
That's right. With a change of use here and the additional zoning entitlement, there was an opportunity to at least, from a standpoint of it being fair and equitable for them to address immediately in front of their building, we're able to do it.
All right, that's all I had, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Any other general questions or comments? If not, thank you all for being here. We're adjourned. See you Monday.